Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, that is Tim. We talk about horror movies on this show. And one of the things we've been doing this year, over the last several months, is because there's a new film and some franchises coming out in October, 3 of them to be specific. We've been working our way through those franchises so that we've done all the films so far for the new one coming out. And of course, one of those franchises is Saw. We've done the first 4 already. This is going to be Saw 5. And of course, the 8th film is coming out next month, so we're just squeezing in these last few in September, which is really depressing because we don't like them very much. But it's so Saw 5. I'm just going to give you the spoiler warning right now. Full spoilers. I don't want to hold back and dance around things. So we thought Saw 4 was the worst one so far. It was a complete mess of a film, and here we are for number 5. So I'll give you the good news, Tim.
Okay.
We're over the hump.
Oh, thank you, Jesus.
We're over the hump. We're in the. We can see the finish line. We have less left now than we did before, and it feels a little bit better. Also, Saw 5, not good, but better than 4.
Okay.
Yeah, come on, it is. There's a couple of reasons why I think it's better than 4. I'm not necessarily saying it's a good movie or that I enjoyed watching it or that it wasn't like a chore to get through. But it wasn't as much of a chore as 4 was.
Well, here's why I might argue that point.
Oh, here we go.
This movie is the exact same movie as every other Saw movie. It is impossible for one to be better or worse than the other. They are literally the same. Like, I can't believe how much these are all just the same movie. It's ridiculous.
Well, yeah, but if you say that for these, you have to, I mean, Friday the 13th movies, like, those are mostly the same.
I don't think so. I think they get similar to a point, but I think it's always, there's like different points to the plot, and then especially once you get into like later ones, Jason does a lot of different stuff. These movies,
He goes to space.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous, but it's different. These all have the exact same structure. It's like, one, you open up on a random, seemingly pointless person in a trap that will come into play later.
Oh, yeah, true, yes.
Then you get like a little recap from the last movie because some character from the last movie that you didn't care about or know that much about is now the main character in this one. And then halfway through their story, we're going to jump to seemingly random people in their own set of traps, which will end up being involved in some way together and have some type
Tim,
of...
These are all valid points. They're all exactly correct. What I will say, though, the reason why I think this is better than 4, or why they're all better than 4 so far, like 4 is the weakest one. 4 was even more convoluted and it jumped around so much. This one, I will give credit over 4, not in general, but over 4. Because the actual game, the core game, is more defined. It's this group of people in this series of rooms, and each room's got a different sort of game / trap in it, and they have to work through. It's more streamlined. And then the actual investigation is, for the most part, more streamlined. Of course, we have flashbacks once again. Although in this case, it's flashbacks as to how the new Jigsaw, the new killer, who's the cop, Hoffman, it's how he became that. How did he meet Jigsaw? How did that happen? And it was funny because it started because at first you don't really realize it's a flashback, and then he runs into Jigsaw and it's like, okay, Jigsaw's dead, so this is actually when he meets him. And you find out that this opening kill that we get at the start, this big pendulum that's swinging back and forth, that this, and someone's watching through the peephole, you find out that was Hoffman, but it wasn't like present day. This wasn't after he became the Jigsaw. This was actually something he did before Jigsaw was caught. This was something he did a long time ago. He emulated Jigsaw so that people would think Jigsaw did this, but in actual fact, this was him killing the man who murdered his sister. And he made it look like it was a Jigsaw killing so he could get away with it. And Jigsaw seeks him out and tries to punish him for that, but kind of admires him. And we get these flashbacks where he is like, oh, I'm going to show you what justice actually is. I'm going to train you, and I'm going to show you. And it basically does all this retconning where it's like, no, he was there the whole time. He helped. He planted the evidence for the Doctor in the first movie. He helped drag all the bodies in for Saw 2. And you see all these sort of little moments happening. Which, by the way, this is the first movie since the first one that I think actually referenced the cops from the first one. Because you see a picture of Danny Glover, and you see a picture of the other dude, whose name I can't remember. I want to say John Cho, but that may be wrong. The cops from the first one. You see them. So that amused me that we're actually referencing stuff that I thought it was off limits. Like I thought the reason why we hadn't referenced Danny Glover and his partner from the first one is because they weren't allowed to use the likeness like in the rest of them.
Oh yeah.
So I don't know if they paid them a little bit. I was like, oh hey, let us use your picture and we'll pay you X amount of money.
See, that might be interesting if I cared at all about the series, but at this point, it's so convoluted.
When did I imply that it was interesting or that it was good?
I'm not saying that you did. I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm just saying like
that's slander. That is slander. I'll have you sued for that.
This is so tedious and convoluted. I can't stand it. It's the you know what it kind of feels like, and I'm not sure if this is something like you can relate to, but growing up, I actually kind of liked school. Like I liked learning, and I was.
What is with all the implications? I don't know if you can relate to this, but when I was growing up, Alex.
Wait till I get to the end, because that's what I.
Okay.
So,
okay.
So I like got good grades because I like studying the chapters and doing the homework and stuff. But then at some point in like middle school or high school, you get to a point where you're like, school sucks, and then you kind of like just stop paying attention, and then it all of a sudden it goes from like, oh, I used to like to do this and didn't really have to try that hard. Now it's like I have to pay attention so hard because this sucks so much. That's what I feel like these movies are. Like usually, you're watching a movie and it's fun, and you don't have to actively think about paying attention. You're just paying attention because you like it. But with these, they suck so much. I have to remind myself, like, no, I have to watch this. I can't.
I'm not gonna lie. There's the last like 3 movies of these, I've had to like at several points rewind it, maybe like 20 seconds, because I'll stop paying attention. I'll look at something else, and I'll be like, oh wait, what just happened? And I have to go back and check because I zoned out. I wasn't paying attention, and I had to go back.
Yeah, and also I think I get the characters confused a lot because they don't have like very distinctive names or looks. Like you could tell me all the cops' names, and I probably couldn't even tell you which one is which. Oh
God, no! Because the main character in this one, like, obviously you've got Hoffman, but the main character who's actually investigating stuff is the FBI guy from the last movie. Remember, his partner was the stupid woman who leaned into the trap, even though this is a thing from a guy who's been making these death traps. Right. She leans into the noise of mechanisms, and she died. So he started this movie. We start things off, and he's still in the rooms from the previous film. Like he's still locked in there, and he ends up getting attacked, and he wakes up, and he's got this box around his head, and it's filling up with water. And he saves himself by stabbing himself in the neck with a pen so he can breathe through his through his pipes. What
I would have been like, nope, I'm done.
I mean, I know this is something you could do. I don't know how accurate you could be with yourself when you can't actually look in a mirror and see like where you're stabbing, but whatever. I'll accept
also, it. Also, FBI agent, not a doctor. I don't know if he's maybe had some medical training on the side, but
I would imagine FBI agents get first aid, at least. Maybe not stabbing in the neck with a pen, but basic first aid. Sure. I would imagine an FBI agent would receive.
If he needed to do the Heimlich on someone, sure, I'd believe that. But yeah, tracheotomy, I'm like,
right.
I don't know.
So he survived, right? But so we actually, I was surprised they brought this up, because one of my complaints at the end of the last one was when we found out that 3 and 4 took place together, and then the guy from 3's daughter was just trapped somewhere and no one was going to go looking for her. But no, sure enough, at the start of this movie, Hoffman comes out holding her. And there's a point to it, because they say that he was meant to be the hero. Like, he came out as the only cop survivor, and he saved the girl, so he had like a success story. And that was going to make him look like a hero, and no one would suspect him. But of course, he says everyone died, and then, unfortunately, FBI man found a way to survive. so he's okay, and he's going to look into to what happened. Yeah, so he goes about investigating, even though he's meant to be off the case because he's injured, and he sneaks around the FBI and he's looking into cases, and he basically just pieces together the backstory as we get these flashbacks of his sister was killed by this guy, he killed the guy like Jigsaw kind of took him under his wing and trained him, and had all this stuff going on. Again, it's more of an excuse to have more Jigsaw, even though he's dead. So okay, I mean,
So was he like so he was working with this guy at the same time he was working with Amanda?
yes, because that happens in this movie, because you don't see them in the same scene, but he talks to Jigsaw about what Amanda's doing at one point.
It's like how many like disciples does he have? Like, is every movie just gonna be like, oh yeah, I was also training this guy?
Well, I think from this point, what should have happened is it should have passed on to the new killer, and the killer's now. And to be fair, I think they imply that is happening. Whether or not they do that in 6, I can't remember 6 at all.
Nor should you.
Nor should I. But at least at the end of this, when the FBI man gets lured into the trap and he picks up the tape recorder, it's the new guy's voice. Because up until this point, the voice so far in every single thing was Jigsaw's voice. Which, by the way, how did Hoffman achieve that in the kill at the start of the movie, which was before he met Jigsaw?
I don't know.
Jigsaw's voice was on the tape. Was he just doing a good impression? Is that what was happening? But
well, I think as we've learned from these movies, Jigsaw is about 9 million steps ahead of every human on the planet. Apparently, he's just the smartest person.
Well, that was the thing. Is like one of the flashbacks as he's dying, kind of like in the middle of 3 or towards the end of 3. Hoffman's in the room with him. And he's like, Hoffman, I need you to play one more game for me. And you think he's setting up the game that the main story of 5 is, the people in the room. And I'm like, how many things did he have planned for after he died? Like, this is ridiculous at this point. There's so much that he's got ready to go. And I guess because he sends like a box to his wife, like as a widow, she goes to like the lawyer, and he's left her some stuff in a box, and I can only assume that this is the evidence on Hoffman should he need to be turned in, because remember that was the whole thing, like, you won't arrest me because I've got all this information, and if I die, it'll get released to people. So I guess the question now is, like, does that go anywhere? Does she use that for anything at any point? I don't know.
She's probably gonna become Jigsaw in like 5 movies.
Probably, because she goes to because part of the plot is that Hoffman's actually setting up the FBI guy, because the idea that there's an accomplice is in everyone's heads. And he sets up, he makes FBI man look suspicious because he's still looking into things. The Jigsaw's wife goes to the FBI and complains that the FBI guy is still following her, and it sets up the idea that he might be the accomplice, and the ending kind of implies that and sets all that up. And his boss, FBI boss man, we'll call him, he's alive at the end, and he sees what's happened, and he that's the whole point, is now that someone's a scapegoat, this person's being blamed. Why I guess it just is to make sure no one looks into him, even though they kill FBI man at the end anyway, so it's not like it was to take him out the picture, because that happens anyway. In a trap which was oddly set up in the last movie, because in the 4th movie you see Jigsaw building this glass box with a glass in it.
Good on you, man.
Because at one point, the wife walks in the room and he covers it up with a cloth, and it's this box that's in this movie, and the tape tells FBI man, all you have to do to survive is go inside the box. It'll hurt, but you'll survive. And sure enough, when our Hoffman Jigsaw guy shows up and attacks him, he gets put in the box, and then he smiles as he plays more of the tape, and we find out it's basically the trash compactor room from Star Wars, and the walls are coming in. This is the ending of the movie, and he's being crushed as the box safely lowers into the ground out of the way of the walls, so he survives. He's safe, the killer's safe in the box, whilst the FBI man gets crushed, and that's your game over kind of moment. And I want to point out, we have talked about the main plot of this movie without bringing up what the actual Saw game is, and that is because the Saw game, as far as I can tell, has very little to do with anything else that's going on in the movie.
And I know we've said this, I think, for every other review, but I don't understand why these are not the focus of the movies. They're easily the best part, and I'd say, I was even entertained in parts of this movie with the traps.
Which is why I think it's better than 4, because it's more streamlined, because it's one group of people going through a series of rooms, like a series of challenges, almost like a game show kind of thing, where they're going from game to game. And each one is like, okay, there is actually a chance to get out of it, and you find out at the end how they could have like survived each room. Because basically what they do is there's a bit of mystery, because they realise they're all connected. The tape says that to them, and one of them seems to know that they are connected, and we find out why, because he's a journalist and he was investigating everyone else, so that's why he has more knowledge than everyone else does. But they're all related to this fire that kills some people, and it was basically like this junkie was paid off to set the fire because this new development company wanted to come in and build a condo, and one of them is like from the fire department, one's from like the corrupt condo board, one's from the city planning board. Like there's basically everyone who was loosely connected to this conspiracy is the people who are here. I will say a couple of the actors were nice to see. I do like Megan Good and I do like Julie Benz, who of course played not Drusilla, sorry, I messed that up. She played Darla on the hit television show Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Thank you.
Oh, you know what? She had dark hair in this, right?
Yeah, she
was the one that lasted a little longer.
Yeah, she survived till the end, seemingly.
Yeah. Okay. I was wondering who she was. Didn't bother to look her up. But
Darla from Buffy. She's also Dexter's wife from Dexter, and she's been in a few other things, but that's her big meaty roles that people know her from. So it was nice to see her. Megan Good, of course. Maybe it's just because I grew up watching My Cousin Skeeter, but it was nice to see her too.
Okay.
Did you never see My Cousin Skeeter? I think it was a Nickelodeon show.
Is that a Doug spin-off?
No, it was it was one of these shows where one of the characters was a puppet, but everyone else was a human, and no one mentioned it really.
I don't think I saw it.
Yeah, it was Megan Good that was in that. She was like the love interest for the main character.
Interesting.
But yeah, there you go. That's why I know who. That's why I knew who that was when she popped up in this. She's been in some else. Okay. She was in that. She was in Minority Report, the TV show, a couple of years ago, which lasted one whole season and got cancelled because it was terrible.
Okay.
So there was a couple of faces that I recognised, which was something. But yeah, the games are okay. Basically, each one is the first one is like they're all like tied to this thing around their neck, and they can walk out, but it pulls the string. All these like maybe strings to softer word, rope. That's or cables. Cables will be a better word, and the cable pulls them back in to this sort of like blade that'll cut off their head. But basically, they get a 1 minute timer, and there's keys out in front of them, and it became quite clear to me that like, okay, when one person walks out, it pulls everyone else back. But they could all get to the key, and it was kind of like all they had to do was quickly in turn let each one go out.
Oh yeah.
Right, and they would be okay and survive. But of course, the one girl gets killed, and it's actually, honestly, typically I hate the deaths in these movies because they're just kind of like over the top and gritty for the sake of being over the top. This decapitation was okay. This was kind of a nice, simple head cut off, fall to the ground. I'm like, okay, that was not bad. Even the pendulum at the start wasn't too bad either. Like, 'cause normally these things, it's like we'll get to it later when we get to the buzzsaw thing, where it's just kind of like grotesque and like dragging it out for no reason. But so 4 of them survive. They go to the next room, and then it's like, okay, there's 3 keys in these jars to get into these safety doors before this nail bomb goes off. And again, I was thinking, why don't 2 of you just go in the one thing? Like,
so yeah, like I didn't think that at first, but then the like last shot of the person going into the door,
it was clear.
The hole.
All 5 of them could have probably fit in one of those bloody.
Yeah, they were huge. I was like, oh, did they not realize that this is very easily could fit like more than 2 people?
There's 4 like gates in the room. There's only 3 keys, but the gates lead to these like almost like little mini sewers. These like ducts, but they're really long. Like they could get quite at least 3 of them probably could fit in one of them quite safely. And but obviously they end up the reporter guy. He ends up getting left behind, and he blows up, and this is an okay effect. Yeah. So again, the main game, as it were, is actually kind of okay. Like it's fine and decent, and it's progressing well enough. Obviously, sometimes the Saw visual style gets in the way of it and kind of ruins it a little bit. But it's definitely better than it's been in the last few. Like it's probably the best main game, as it were, since Saw 2.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. But yeah, so then they get in again, and you think, oh, the junkie guy is going to get betrayed by the two girls, but then Julie Benz, Darla from Buffy, she like turns her back on Megan Good and stabs her, and like because they have to like shock someone to open the door, but it'll take like it'll kill whoever they do it to, and so that gets them through, and then they get to the last thing. And it's like, okay, this needs like 10 pints of blood. You need to like put your hand in this hole where the buzzsaw is going to cut your hand, and it's going to like, your blood's going to fill it up. And that's when they realise, oh shit, all these keys that we had in the first room, one key would have opened all 5 of the things. And then in the second room, we could have all got into 1 or 2 of those little rooms. And then in the third room, if all 5 of us were still there, we could all take a part of the shock each and we wouldn't get killed. And then once we got into this room, we'd all just give a little bit of blood. Instead of like 2 of us giving like almost half of our, blood. So, and then that's when it gets super saw, and it's just the guy's got his hand in and it's ripping apart, and he's like screaming, and the camera's doing all this spinning around nonsense and all the rest of it. And when he brings his hand out, his like arms just like in half, and it's dangling because it cuts him down there, it cuts him down the sort of middle fingers, and it's just this slit, and his arms just kind of dangling in half.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll give these movies is that they always do a good job of like grossing me out, which I think is clearly some of the point.
Well, that's why people call it torture porn, because instead of just doing the nice bit of violence that we kind of enjoy in a lot of horror movies, they linger on it and let it just kind of like. Have it in your face. Yeah, it's not fun. Yes. Yeah. The decapitation and the exploding man were kind of fun because they were nice and sudden, and they were kind of like, oh, that looked good. Whereas this was just kind of like, they just get their hand in a hole and they're screaming for like 5 minutes, but the camera's just trying to make it exciting because it's spinning around and doing all these things, and it's just whatever. So yeah, it was more streamlined. It's not a good movie, but I would definitely put it above 4 and probably above 3 as well, honestly.
It's hard because I really dislike these movies, so I don't remember a lot of specifics about them other than, I think I liked 2 more than, some of the other ones, and I don't know, but they all kind of get jumbled in my mind.
Yeah, I think at this point we're looking at 2, 1, 5, 3, and then 4 in a pit. But
I'd say that's fair.
I think even 1, which some people like a lot, we were lukewarm on, and well, I'd say actually not even lukewarm. I'd say we're downright. We're talking about it as if it was mediocre, and we've kind of just been living under that or around there since then. But 4 was really bad.
I think at least with the first one, you can give it credit for being unique at the time. Whereas these, and I was joking, earlier, obviously they're different. Each movie is different, but they have, I do feel a very similar core structure to all of them, and so you can't even give these later ones the little bonus of, oh well, at least it's different. Then it's no, now they're just really going by the motions, and everything just really feels like it bleeds in together, and instead of being these individual movies, it's just a big blob of this honestly, one ongoing story.
Yeah, honestly, because they keep trying to retcon things back in and make it feel even more interlaced and twisty and turny, that it does get hard to separate them, and it does feel like one big mess. I will say I think I'm following it more this time, or better this time, than I did when I originally seen some of these movies, because obviously before there'd be a year between them. And I would a character from a previous movie would pop up, and I'd be like, who the hell's that? I don't recognize them. Whereas at least this time, I'm kind of keeping track of that stuff to a point. Yeah. I can't remember names, but I recognize the faces.
Yeah, we joke about, it's kind of torturous having to watch all of these back to back, but it is probably the best way to do it, because if we waited a year or 2 between these, I'm already lost. I feel when I go into these movies, and even just watching one 2 weeks ago or something, that I don't even know how I remember anything from a year after.
Yeah, I really don't know either. So yeah, Julia Benz is still kind of alive at the end, and the FBI boss man like is found her. He calls for backup. He's like, "Yeah, put an APB out on a, agent whatever his name is," and and that's when we cut to him in the trap, and he gets crushed by the wall. We see his bones sticking out and everything as he's dying. And I guess that sets up whatever Saw 6 is going to be. At the very least, though, I'll say this one's less of a cliffhanger as well. I feel like the last 2 or 3 all ended on these big kind of, you need to come back next time, whereas this one does feel like kind of an ending. Yeah. We have a new killer who'll go and do stuff, but we don't really have, like
at least it didn't end with someone in a trap or getting a door closed on them and then just being like, all right, so what's going to happen to them? At least, we're pretty sure that this dude gets crushed inside this room.
Yeah, because we see it. Even if he doesn't die, he's going to be like a bloody mess on the floor. He can't move.
Yeah, and unless he's going to live his life as a human puddle.
And by far the worst of the endings was Saw 3 with the your girl's still alive. You're going to have to play one more game to get to her. And then the end of 4 just shot him dead right away, like minutes later after he found that out, and it led to absolutely nothing. So,
oh god,
I guess that, and I guess that's us. That's one of our quicker discussions, but there's only so much to talk about with these.
At this point, I don't know what to say. The direction is the same. It's that same crappy, frenetic, spinny rock music, style that we hated in all the other ones. The plot is the same bloated, self-referential mess.
Yeah, it always seems to care more about the investigation than it does the actual main game, which is annoying. And it's gotten worse in the last couple because Jigsaw's dead. It's not only an investigation now; it's an investigation, flashbacks, and the main game.
And I wonder, the people that are really big on this series, I wonder if that's what they like about it. Because if someone was just like, "Hey, I'm a really big fan of, I like these kind of crazy death traps and stuff," I'd be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, those are the most interesting parts." And honestly, if that was what the movies were like, I still wouldn't love them, but I think it would be a lot more positive on them. But I mean, I wonder if the reason why people like these movies is because, it's this big police drama that I'm involved in. But I just can't imagine it's so...
I did laugh though. See at the start when he's getting his promotion and they've got this press room, and you see the photos of Danny Glover and everyone else. I did think it's quite funny actually that I was like, oh yeah, there has been 6 cops who have died over the course of this this franchise. It's actually kind of insane how many of the cops in this building have went.
And I know it's longer, but just watching the movies, it feels like this is all happening in 3 days.
It does. But by the way, just to correct myself from earlier, the detective in the first one, not Danny Glover, was Ken Lung. I can remember his name.
Oh, okay.
I like to correct that because I said John Cho and I knew it wasn't right. So Ken Lung. Yeah. That said, though, the fact that I did that 15 minutes ago means there's probably going to be a bunch of comments correcting me because they don't wait until they get to the end and they're going to hear me do this. Ah dear. There you go. That's Saw 5. Let us know what you think of it in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on Twitter.
What about our scores?
Oh, scores. Oh, you're right. Of course, yeah. Scores. Good job you stopped me there, Tim. I was going to just wrap things up. What would you give Saw 5 out of 10?
Jeez,
and honestly, as much as it would be funny to give it 5 out of 10, I think that's actually aiming too high. So.
Oh yeah.
So, what would you give Saw 5?
I was kind of thinking about being generous and giving it a 4, but even that I think is too high. But I think a 3.5. I don't even remember what I gave the other ones. I think either 2.5 or a 3. But I'll give this one a little bit. Just it does edge itself out compared to the other ones, so half a point for that, I guess.
I'm going to go a bit higher. I'm going to go with a 4.
Okay.
So still bad, but not good. I definitely will never watch it again. But it was not as painfully tedious as 4 was. 4, I don't remember what I gave that either. I gave a 2 or something like that, maybe even less.
So either they're getting slightly better, or we're finally succumbing to Stockholm syndrome.
If I remember correctly, I think Saw 6 was worse again. Not to get you in the mood for the next one, but I remember that being worse than 5, but we'll find out if I'm right about that pretty soon. Because we need to finish this series before October, and we've got 2 movies left, so look forward to that.
Great.
But speaking of October's coming soon, and October we're having lots of extra episodes, like 4 a week, maybe even more, depending on how adventurous we feel. It does mean we're going to take the first week in November off, but it does mean you're going to have a month of like lots of extra horror movie reviews. The other thing that means is we're doing extra votes. You know, normally our patrons who are $5 and over get to vote on an episode once per month. This month, voting for October's bonus movie is actually going to be multiple votes. There's going to be 2 votes for patrons, the classic vote, which is a bunch of classic movies, the knee-high mischief vote, which is a bunch of movies with either small creatures or puppets or something like that. But then there's a third vote, and the third vote is a public vote. Everyone can vote on that. You can get the link for that in the description below, and that's a werewolf vote, a bunch of werewolf movies, so you can vote on that as well.
Tell your cheapskate friends.
Tim, don't insult people like that. That's just a shame. So there you go. That's all the bonus stuff that's coming up for October. So there'll be 3 winners of votes to do. There'll be new movies and franchises to do, and there's going to be other stuff as well. So yeah, let us know what you think of the movie in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on Twitter at mild_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the channel, like I said, you can go to patreon.com/milefuzztv. And don't worry if you don't, we do not consider you a cheapskate, despite what Tim just said. So thank you very much for watching. Keep watching scary movies, hopefully not Saw films, and we'll see you next time.